Let us talk about how to bring energy into the body. That is other ways to do that besides the mouth and the nose, which is what we normally associate with bringing energy into the body. And the way that we do that with our mouth and our nose is we breathe through our nose and we eat through our mouth. We also have a secondary breathing device within our mouth, but our mouth is used primarily for eating. And actually, the way that the face is designed is really cool, right? And that's why it gets replicated within the species of animals on this earth and apparently on other planets as well. This is called a pentagram, a five-pointed star or a pentagram shaped being is two arms up top, two legs at the bottom, a head, and then the head has a face similar to ours. And this is the humanoid shape with the eyes above the nose, above the mouth. And the reason why you would have the mouth on the bottom is because you're bringing things into the mouth. You're bringing external objects that are physical into the mouth. So if things fall out of the mouth, it doesn't get into the nose. Because if we're eating and the nose is underneath the mouth, then those physical objects, those crumbs would fall into the nose and will also fall into the eyes. And so eyes above the nose, which is bringing in air. Also, that air, if it's breathed in too much, will get dust and things that you breathe in will come in. If the eyes were beneath the nose, it would come into that. So this five-starred pentagram-shaped person, otherwise known as a humanoid, is pretty common from what I've heard of interdimensional, extra-dimensional, interplanetary beings saying so. Our shape is the mammalian version of this humanoid, and you can also have insectoid, reptilian, even aquatic versions with this shape. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, during this whole stream, is discuss, experiment, practice with how to bring in energy into the body besides using the nose and the mouth, because these are how we do it, because there is life force in food. There is life force in air. However, air is not life force. Air is not prana. Same thing with food. Food is not prana. Prana is within food. Food has this prana or this life force, but prana exists everywhere. Same thing with light. Light exists everywhere. Although we only register it with our eyes, but it's in everything. And the definition of light and the definition of energy, we're not going to talk about, but that's essentially, should I just say it's life force? I'm going to just refer to it as life force, even though it's not completely accurate in all the different perspectives I take. But if there's prana in air, and that's why we breathe the air, is there a way to intake prana besides breathing? And the answer to that is yes. And the cultures over in the East know this. They know that there's gates throughout the body that is not in the nose and the mouth. And if we can actually lessen the air flow into the nose and the mouth, you can increase the other gates in the body's capacity to pull in this prana. If you guys have ever drove by a park and you see people doing qigong and they're moving their hands up and down very slowly, what they're doing is they're harmonizing this qi. They call it qi. I've been calling it prana, but they call it qi or ki in other cultures. They're harmonizing this to their hands. They're using their hands to harmonize this energy. And then they can do a practice called bone breathing, which I'd like to share with you guys now. And bone breathing is really cool because you bring in this energy, this vital energy, through the tips of your fingers, the tips of your toes, and you spiral it in through your bones and you pack it into your bone marrow. And what's produced in your bone marrow? Anybody know? Anybody know what's produced in your bone marrow that has to do with regeneration? We'll say that. Within the bone marrow, this is where stem cells are produced. Stem cells are produced throughout our entire life in the bone marrow, in our kidneys, and our liver. The kidneys is also another very important gate in Taoism. Kidney energy. This is the kidney meridian, goes all the way down to the center of our foot as well. That's what connects to the earth and brings up that energy into our kidneys. Our kidneys are also connected to our children and our parents in this culture. And even from an Eastern yogic perspective, we're connected through this chi, ki, prana, life force, light, energy, God, whatever you are calling it. We're connected to 7 generations in front of us and 7 generations behind us. And we're connected now because time is a construct, it's a limit that we experience. And so the choices that we make in this present moment impact and affect the 7 generations of us that are existing now in other realities and the 7 generations behind us. And so there's this concept of generational curses. That's where things like that can be, quote, healed in the present moment by you, because your ability to change or reprogram yourself in this moment is going to impact all the generations that come before and after us. And by after us, I mean our children, our children's children, our children's children's children. And it's amazing because when you actually look at time, we think about it as past, present, future. And that's just about how all science is done, right? There's a cause that happened in the past that is affecting, cause and effect. It's effecting something in the present moment, which will then change the future outcome. Our entire basis of science is based on cause and effect. It's basically reduced down into a mechanistic, mechanical, something happens in the past, A, which then changes and it causes B or C. And if you take time is not linear, time is happening in totality now, it must be looked at. It meaning science. Science must be looked at in a different way, because even scientists have discovered this. They've discovered how we can impact things in the future, or we can recognize things in the future. You can look up studies on precognition. An example, I don't remember the researchers, but an example, I could have, if I knew I was going here, I could have found this study. Scott saying bone breathing and bone marrow brainwashing classic. Yes, people have said stem cells. So I'll get to that bone breathing in a second. Scott, love to breathe pure energy from behind the ears where the temporal bones slide on the parietal bone, similar to like a fish gill. So I don't know if and Scott, nice to see you again. I saw him in New York. The concept, we're talking about time and we're talking about lineages. I think we're going to get a little bit into today how we can actually cross over species as well, because of this, let's call it soul or spirit that makes us all up, is traveling into and through everything. And there is a way for us to access the power, the energy, the knowledge of, I should say wisdom. Knowledge is pretty close. Wisdom of everything, including other species, including other humans, including other timelines, including other dimensions, including fictional scenarios that you imagine. Imagination, it's a place. Nation means place. Imagination, the etymology of image, likeness, to copy, to imitate, aim. These are all things with etymology of image. It's an aim. And nation is a state of being. And so an imagination is that you're aiming for a state of being. That's what imagination is. And the way that imagination is defined in our culture now is that it's a fake place. And it's not a fake place. It's simply you aiming for a state of being. And if you can be a professional aimer of a state of being, then you begin to embody. It's not just something that's happening in the mind up here. It's a full, complete embodiment where it actually does transform you. And with these gnoses, we can hold different perspectives of what certain things mean. We're taught, again, another program, we're taught in school that there's only one right answer, that there's only one way that things can be. And this is simply a program brought to you by the people that rule this society. Specifically, the person that actually invented the school system was brought in from Germany. No. Let me back up. Germany actually borrowed our school system over there to increase segregation of the basically the non-equals. So Germany actually loved our school system. But I want to even say that the school system was, what was modern school system invented by? I know that sentence doesn't make sense, but hopefully Google can figure it out. I want to say it was somebody with the name Wilhelm. Is that? I know it's not Wilhelm Reich. The German, this is it. Wilhelm von Humboldt. The Humboldtian model is how we designed our universities with the concentration upon science, and it was made to serve a upper elite class. And so education, our education system was made to produce employees that listen to direction. And more specifically, it was made by the Germans to produce soldiers that listen to direction, because they got spanked in World War I because the soldiers were not listening to direction. And so they started training their youth to obey authority, to obey rules, to act on knowledge of what is correct and what is not. And so then when World War II came along and they said, this is the answer, act on it, the soldiers complied because they were not free thinkers. They were not open-minded. They have been reduced to this black and white, reductionist, mechanistic frame of mind where there's just yes, no, right, wrong scenarios, which is how we're all taught in school. There's a test, and There's right answers and wrong answers, and you are given a grade based on that. And so when we open up from this, all right, another comment saying that gotta avoid the school system, especially 1st through 8th grades. I mean, even when you get into college, almost all universities are it's the Rockefeller system. It's owned by the pharmaceuticals. Rockefeller got into oil, and then he started translating the petroleum that he was using in his gigantic industry, started translated that into pharmaceuticals and started buying up all the universities and shutting down all of the, and they called them alternative medicine. We call that now alternative medicine. But before pharmaceuticals, that was just medicine. A doctor was a teacher. That's what the etymology, let's just look up etymology of doctor. The docteur, church father from Old French docteur and directly from medieval Latin doctor, is a religious teacher, advisor, scholar. To show, teach, cause to know. So doctor, yes, it was associated with the church, but this was essentially a teacher, instructor, learned man. One skilled in a learned professional. A doctor's a teacher, which means that a doctor was always meant to empower the person that they're treating. And that was completely washed out. Now the doctor's just an ultimate authority that says, take this pill, don't ask me questions, and listen to me. Backed by the science. Oh, I never finished my thing about science. If you look up precognition, you're going to see a bunch of studies having to do with the human being's ability to cognate, which means learn, but it means to know things in the future. And they're very simple studies, and there's several of them. A simple experiment is hook somebody up to a device that measures their emotions or measures their frequency of the body, and start showing them randomized pictures that are showing pleasant pictures or gory pictures, and see if the body responds before or after the picture shows up, and even before or after the machine decides which random picture it's going to pick. And study after study have proven that humans, especially the heart, can tell when and what type of image is going to appear on the screen before the machine even picks it, which means that an essential human trait is being able to be connected to the quote future. The question is, like, how is that happening? So somebody talk about Horace Mann created the school system in the 1700s. Yes. So 1700s, but I'm talking about modern school system. So school was developed before what I'm talking about, but then they went and changed the school system. I keep on forgetting this guy's name, Wilhelm von Humboldt. It's not a common name that I'm used to saying. So Wilhelm von Humboldt was the German person that influenced our current school system, how the school is currently being done now. And that was to make sure that soldiers do things. So I'm saying all of this to lay down the framework that the way that we all, including myself, was taught to think about the world in terms of yes, no, right, wrong, and an assessment of value such as grades, and listening to an ultimate authority figure that does what? It tells us what to think. The teachers tell us what to think. Does that make sense to you? How are we going to go somewhere where we are the children? Shouldn't the children be asking questions? And the more knowledgeable person with experience be answering those questions? Because the children's brains are wide open. They're going to be asking questions after questions after questions that are going to lead into a scenario that's going to develop a learning mechanism. But the fact that an adult who is essentially played out, right? They experienced the world as it is over the last 40 years. They have no real idea of what those children are going through in the present moment and what they're going to need to know in the next 40 years. The child actually knows that. It has an instinct, it has an intuition on what is important. And we get rid of that in the children, and we tell the children what to think and what is right. And again, it's just, I'm not saying it shouldn't be like that. That's exactly how it is. And so it is like that. And it's like that because it's the agenda of those who are ruling the society to have employees and to serve the upper class, the elites, because they're the ones that are maintaining control of the system. And so that's how it is. With that knowledge, we can say, okay, can I go back to how I'm designed and be more open-minded? Let's get back to where we started. Can I be more open-minded about how we bring in energy? And is this energy able to come into us besides our nose and mouth? And when you can actually start sensing energy coming in and out of your body, you can start tasting this energy. I say the word taste, but other people might have a different word. Obviously, taste has to do with our tongue. Someone's saying, can I pin myself so others can more easily find or follow you? I don't actually know how to do that, but let me see if I can do that. Actually, that's actually a good idea. I've never tried doing this, but let me see if I can do it. So I'm going to log into my personal Instagram page, and then I'm going to, so right now I'm streaming on Human Garage's page, but if I go to the live, which is right here, hola, this is me, and I just posted a comment, and then I pin the comment. Oh, it just says I have an ability to delete the comment. All right, so I actually can't pin myself. I can't pin the comment because I can pin. Oh, I know why I can't pin the comment. Because I was trying to pin the comment as myself. Anyways, if you just ask in the comments, other people will tell you who I am. And this will also be posted. Okay. All right, I pinned myself on there. Okay, bone breathing. So let us be open to the fact that maybe there's other energy within the air that's not just oxygen. And if we just get into a sitting position, we can be in a chair, that's fine. You can be, I would say in a chair is better than cross-legged, because when you cross your legs, you're crossing over the wires, and it could short them out. So just sit down on a chair, put your hands on your knees, and just simply start restricting the breath. And from a fascial standpoint, this will start making sense, because bone breathing was taught to me by Montauk Chia, and he used the bones. But actually the meridians are running through the fascia, and the fascia is what's carrying energy through the body. And so the bones are just nice for us to visualize, because it's how we learned how to, there's this bone that's separated from this bone. The bones aren't really the structure of the body, the fascia is. The bones actually grow into the fascia of the body. I'm going to go on another tangent, but the fascia isn't a wrapping of muscle, which is what I was taught when I went to school. I have a degree in psychology and exercise science. And what I was taught in exercise science degree is that fascia is just a bag over the organs and the muscles. It sort of just holds them in place. And think about it as opposed to a bag. it actually is the origin of everything, and it spirals out from the center. So imagine there's a starting point of the fascia, and it spirals out, and the bone grows into those spirals. And then the tendons also. The tendon isn't just a solid cord. It's got a spiral of fascia, and the tendon's like a telescope. So that spiral is like a telescope within the tendons, within the muscle, within the bones. You can imagine a telescope where there's different blood supply on each one of those rings. So it's not just a solid piece. I mentioned the word mechanistic and reductionist because we look at a tendon in a scientific standpoint and we're like, that's a rod, that's solid. It's not really solid when you actually look at it and you can see the tendon moving and you can see the different layers of the tendons moving. How can you do that? Because you can see blood arteries moving on the different layers as the tendon moves. You can see the arteries moving at different speeds. Like the outer ones move far and the inner ones move not so far. And so imagine this spiral going through your bones. And again, remember I said we're going to spiral the energy into the bones, but it's really the fascia that runs through the bones. And that fascia spirals out into our skin, into our hair, and then it spirals into non-physical aura, which aura really is physical, but I'm saying non-physical because I mean less dense. So the aura is actually physical, but for the most part, I'll talk about it as non-physical because there's not really a word for sub or semi-physical. It's kind of like semi-physical. It's connected to the etherical, non-physical realm that's not tied into time and space. But also still, we can measure it with physical devices like Caroline photography. Okay, bone breathing, which we're all waiting for. We are all waiting for. Somebody says they can't hear. Is that sound check? Sound check. Is that true? If somebody can verify that they can hear, that would be amazing. Quasi-physical. Quasi is as if it were is what quasi means. I feel like a lot of people thinks quasi means fake. Again, there really isn't, like, what is the etymology of fake? So quasi means as if it were. The etymology of fake means counterfeit or to rob, to swindle. So things like, oh no, I was thinking of pseudo, not quasi. Anyways, quasi was can hear you clearly. I can hear you. Okay. I can hear you in Sweden. Amazing. I was just there. Maybe I met you in real life. Okay, so if we restrict the breathing, we can start to feel, see if you can pull in energy through the fingertips. So breathe less through the nose. Close your eyes. And see if you can feel almost like, if you imagine little lightning bolts coming out of your fingertips, can you feel that energy stimulating your fingertips? And every breath that you're restricting, can you feel yourself pull this energy further and further and further up your arms? And for me, I look at the arms as extensions of the heart. So bing bing moments is saying feels like electricity. And as you do that, see if you can keep on pulling that energy in so that you can start feeling it go from your fingertips up towards your heart. So it's one direction. The exhales, we're not sending it back. We're just pulling it in. And see if you can increase the intensity of the breath. That doesn't mean that you're pulling more air in. You're actually restricting more, but you're breathing harder. But hold on to that electricity. So let's exhale, take an inhale, and we're going to hold at the top of the inhale. Hold, and now tighten all the muscles in your arms and feel that energy spiraling up and packing deep inside your bone marrow. And then exhale slowly. Inhale as that energy spirals in through your bones of your finger and through your arms up towards your heart. Hold that inhale and squeeze all the muscles of your arms. And exhale. One more time. Inhale. Squeeze the muscles, pack it in. We're packing it into the center of our limbs. It's packing in tight. You're pulling it up into you. And exhale. Remain here, and now let's start doing our toes. See if you can restrict the inhales and feel energy coming into the tips of your toes. It might help to kick off your shoes if you have some on. You might even feel it coming in from the soles of your feet. Clever name for that, huh? Sole. Run this energy up your legs towards your navel point, but we're going to pack this energy into the femur bones, into the center of your upper leg bones, the thigh bones. So go ahead and start strengthening the inhale and hold at the top and then squeeze those muscles when you get to the top and hold it for about 80% of where you can go, and then exhale and then start again. And it's okay if you don't feel it. Imagine it, embody it. Imagine and embody the imagination. It might have been easier for some to feel it in the hands, and you need to imagine it in the legs. Pack it in. Continue breathing, slightly restricted. The kidneys are back here. Let's see if we can bring energy in through those 2 points right beneath your ribs in your back, or maybe in through your perineum, which is another very important gate in Taoism. And it's also where everything starts in the Eastern meridian system, Eastern chakra system, I should say. We can also experiment with 2 inches below the front of the belly button. So for those of us who are in advance, we can focus on all 3 of those points, the 2 kidneys in the back, the perineum, the navel center, 2 inches below the belly button. And let's run this energy up towards the heart. So stronger inhale. Tense the muscles, pack it in. Exhale when you need to. We're going to take 3 breaths like this. And let's take 3 more breaths through the fingertips, the toe tips, and these 3 points. Holding the breath and squeezing tight, all the muscles of the body. And you can come out of that when you get a chance. Once again, that was taught to me as bone breathing. Someone's saying the body's vibrating. But think about bones as the internal fascial system. And so the fascia is actually where this voltage or this energy is flowing into the body. And if you didn't feel it, it's okay. Think about the first time you've tried other things. The first time is not always graspable by our sensation. We're unable to grasp onto what it really means. Stefferiti, these names. I don't know if it's Steffi, Stefferiti, Stephanie is saying, I'm struggling with it. Yes, it's all right if you're struggling with it. This is a practice. This is why in the East they're called practices. They're not called sports where things are to be better than other people. It's a practice. And the whole practice is the point. It's not about the finish line. It's not about the goal. It's about the practice. Within the practice is the learning. So back to the fascia, back to these open gates, these open channels. I definitely feel more open, especially in my forearms. And I talked about the gates being in the fingertips, the kidneys, the perineum, the navel point, the toe tips. But these fascial spirals go through the entire body. And for those of you familiar with the chakra system, these spirals also are radiating the energy of the chakras. So you can think about them as there's red in the middle and it goes out into the crown, which is in the exterior. It's in the, should I do it that way? The aura also has all of the chakras going from red in the middle, layered out in red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo. It's going white, gold. It's going out into the aura. It's going through the fascia. But you can feel your body being open and you can sense the room that you're in. Or if you're outside, you can sense your environment better. Becoming what you desire says, this has just made me aware of my body in a way that made me feel more aligned physically. Right. So within the space that you're in, and even the time that you're in, you're actually sensing a feeling. And this feeling, like I was saying earlier, is a taste. And if you're open like this, when you go into a forest, you can literally just imagine going into a forest right now. And you may be able to feel the tingles or the energy in the body shift. And you can imagine going to an ocean, because the intelligence of your body is always registering your environment. It's always registering your environment. We're just not bringing that up to our conscious awareness. There's also gates in the mind that let in information that it deems important to us. A lot of times, if we're going on a hike, what's important to the mind is finishing the hike. And you may be not consciously registering how the forest feels. But there's a memory of that there. And on top of that, the time that you went through the forest is existing now, and you can connect to that moment. And you can start to taste the different scenes that you're in. And you can imagine being at the ocean, walking on the sand, how that feels. Just feel it with the full energy system. Now take yourself into a classroom, into school. How does that feel? There's a whole sensation here that you can use just like we use our ears or our eyes or the feeling of our skin. This is a much deeper, profound, yet subtle sensation that, if practiced, and you can practice it with bone breathing, you can literally also just practice it by going into nature. And the reason why I say nature is because there's other beings in nature that are radiating out energy. And you can just walk up to a tree and you can feel the energy flow of the tree. The trees are desperately aiming to communicate with you. How does the ground feel? You can shift your awareness into that frequency field. You can look up at the top of the tree compared to the bottom of the tree. You can look up to a mountaintop compared to where you are now. You can look it to a river. Wherever you bring your sensation, you can start feeling that energy. And in our real life, this can be also used. If you guys have heard a download, like the terminology of a download, I just got a download. You can use this to download codes within this man-made reality. So if you are learning something or striving towards a goal, which is this whole man-made masculine reality. If you're striving towards a goal, you can use this feeling sense, which is feminine, right? It's receptive. Masculine is penetrating, like going into something to achieve. There's purpose. It's like an arrow. And the feminine is about receiving, receptive. And you can, when you combine them, you have an enlightened sense of knowledge. I was going to go on another tangent, but I don't think I'm going to. Downloading codes. So let's say you go into somebody who has the thing that you're currently on the road towards. Remember I said feel how your current house is, or feel the forest. You can go into a magnificent building where there is a lot of achievement and knowledge and wisdom and practice done in order to erect this building. And you can download, you can feel, you can receive the energy of that space, and even of the person that inhabits that space or the people that built that space. And so some of us, I'm not saying anybody here listening, but some of us go places and they immediately start tearing down the people there. All these people are this and that, and you start talking crap about the people that have the things that you desire to have. That immediately breaks the connection. So if you're complaining, if you're against something or someone, you will never be there with them, because you're making that inharmonious. You're aligning to the opposite of that field. And so go in and receive the energy. Let that inhabit you, and that's going to be the match for you to inhabit it. Now, the great thing about being able to feel with your energetic system is that when you travel around the world, you'll notice that every place has a different feeling. And you just open up to it. How does this feel? And it brings a new sensation to traveling, because that also is going to register a memory in your psyche of when you were there and how it felt. As I said, though, you can still go back to places you've been, and there's still a code there. There's still something registered for you to witness now. But this is a way for you to consciously catalog that while you were there, and it brings your awareness, your sensation of it, it adds another dimension onto it. And it allows you to be more fully expressed in that moment. It allows your scenery to actually express fully into you. And just like you might like going and looking at different types of cars, or you might like looking and learning about any subject, going to different places, even within your current city or state, and you recognizing and registering and comparing and contrasting the differences of how a place feels. I feel like this is like when I was a kid and my father would want us to go places, like on a road trip. He'd want to go on all these like stops, and we'd be like, no, let's just get there. Because at least I currently, it wasn't even kid. It was like what I'm thinking of a trip that we took to California, and I was 17. So definitely I was eating junk food in middle school and high school like complete candy, like fruit roll-ups and gushers for like all day long. Instead of the school lunches, that's all. I would go to the snack bar and the vending machines and I would eat that stuff all day long. So I was definitely closed off. I was unable to witness and perceive these spots on earth that had value. And I would basically say, no, let's not do that. Let's just drive straight through. Where he recognized the value of a place. And so it's great stuff. Some of us are already doing this. I'm not talking to you guys like somebody who's doing something that you aren't. You're always been doing this. It's just a question of some of us, myself included, ignored it for a really long time. And so this is just a simple practice to be able to open up those gates and those channels so that we can experience the places that we go a little bit more fully. All right, everybody, until next time. Ta-ta. Bye-bye.